what are some things that you think parents can do to make it easier on the kids? And you've touched on a couple of those things today.
I would say when you were with Brian and like got married with Brian, Brian was very like dominant, like I am your dad. And that was really hard because in my head I'm still trying to get to the point where, oh, my parents aren't getting back together. And then also with the loyalty thing, like I can only have one dad.
Right.
So it was hard for me when Brian was like telling me what to do, like as a parent. I mean, he was a parent, but in my head I'm like, he's not my parent.
Right.
So, and of course you go into, okay, well now I have 3 parents, you know, and I'm a teenager.
Right. And then your dad remarried and you got 4.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, I feel like parents, when they get a divorce and they get together with somebody, you know, like you were saying, you were so excited. You want that for your kids too. You want them to be excited. And I think it's important not to push that on them. Like, you need to be excited about this. Like, I'm happy, you should be happy.
Right.
Because you definitely don't know what is going on in their head.
Sure.
I mean, lots of different thoughts, like, what if this doesn't work out? Like, then I have to do a whole other transition.
Right.
And, you know.
You've lost faith at that point.
Yes, yes. And, like, I, like, saw you were happy, Brian was happy, but in my head, I'm like, I'm not happy. Do they not care about me? So I definitely think pushing, like, authority and also, yeah, I would just say, like, pushing authority and just being like, I'm your parent.
Right,
That.
right.
If you don't do that, I feel like it's a little easier to transition into that.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we've learned about is discipline. Do you want to talk about that? Like what we know now, what not to do?
Yeah. So one of the biggest mistakes I made when we were just forming our family is that I stepped into the role of step parent, but really as if I was a parent. I parented you the way I parented my biological kids. With biological kids, you have the right to discipline them, to raise them in that fashion, because you made them. But with a blended family, you don't have that right. And in fact, it's not even healthy to step in and start doling out discipline and treating them as if you've raised them all their lives.
Right. Yeah, that was definitely a tricky part because at that time, right after we got married, I went back to school. And so if you guys remember, I was in grad school. So I was gone in the evenings, and that left Brian to, you know, you guys with Brian. And that I can remember the stories, you know, that, you know, you guys would tell me, which, you know, loyalty from my perspective, that was hard as well, because I'm trying to create this new relationship, right, with my husband and trying to learn how to trust him. And at the same time, my children are saying, hey, come on over here to our side. So there was a lot of alignment issues that I think all of us were dealing with, of who are we supposed to align with. And we certainly were not all on the same page at that point.
Right. And I really think, like, parents who have gotten a divorce and they're in a new relationship, I think it's super important to kind of go through like a list of, this is what I would do in this scenario if my kid was acting up. This is what I would do. So then the step parent would know, okay, this is how they'd handle this, and not do the complete opposite. So they're like, what is going on? Because in my head, like, you were strict, but Brian was strict.
Yes.
And, you know, part of me, I didn't know how to act towards that.
Right.
Especially because I didn't like Brian.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I gave you another reason to not like him.
So I think it's super important. Like, I would say, like, parents getting in a new relationship, to go over, the parents together go over a list of, this is how I would discipline them. That way they know. Kind of like refer back to it if they need to. That way it's not just like a complete change and shock to the kids. I mean, you can know how someone disciplines their kids by like living with them for a little while, but you don't know every single thing that they'd go through unless you have it all written down and refer back to it.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like communication is a huge part
Mm-hmm.
in this. When Brian came in, when you went to grad school and we were alone with Brian, it was new because we were used to kind of strict, but a little bit more laid
little more
back
flexible.
on things. But when Brian came into the picture, it was more, okay, you're doing this, you're doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like communication is a huge
Mm-hmm.
aspect when it comes to going into a blended family.
Oh, 100%. I can remember us having conversations, and my kids were foreign to him. You know, I mean, his kids were they just behaved differently.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember him saying, "What is wrong with your kids?" And I said, "What's wrong with yours?" You know, because we just had very different perspectives of how children behaved and how they responded, and it's just personalities,
right,
is what it is. And so I remember him commenting, "Why is Austin so loud? He's just so loud." And I just thought, that's just normal, right? But it was normalized because you're mine, and
you're just used to
that's
it.
just how it is, right? But it was something new and different for him. Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's interesting because you talk about, we talk about this issue where I went to grad school, and so Brian definitely had to take on more responsibility. But during that time in my life, I think the clinical term is hot mess for where I was. And as a mom, newly single parent and going through lots of transitions in my life, it was really difficult. And Brian became this stabilizing force for me.
Right.
So I allowed, I was just like, oh, come on in.
You
You want to
take care
do
of
this? Great. Because that's less pressure on me. So I can understand your perspective on that was definitely, and we both agree now in hindsight, it's like, that probably wasn't the best way to do things. But as I stabilized and began to kind of get my bearings again and know, okay, this is where my confidence is as a parent and as a woman and as a wife. How did that impact the two of you as you began to see your mom go from pretty shaky, pretty unstable, because you saw it, the tears and a lot of emotion, and you began to see me become a little bit of a different person. What was that like for you?
It was a big change. Honestly, there was a lot of times when we hardly ever saw you, especially for me being so young.
Mm-hmm.
You went to school, and then by the time I went to bed, I would see a little bit in the morning, but then you just take off. But you've really grown as as a mother and as a woman, and
Did it help you though?
Honestly, yes. The more involvement that you've had with us has really helped me and shaped me to who I am and who honestly we are.
Yeah.
Like I said, there was a lot of time when I didn't get to spend a lot of time with you. It was mostly spending more time with Brian.
Right.
But as the years grew on and you graduated, we got to spend more time, and I really feel like that kind of pulled us all in together.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree. So just being more stabilized, and when you went to school, it was kind of hard because it wasn't just a replacement for my dad, it was a replacement for my mom. So I'm like, okay, I have two parents that aren't really there, and then there's Brian,
and there's this new guy.
Yeah. So I think definitely you being more stabilized and knowing okay, this is going to work. You guys are doing
We're
good. Definitely helped a lot of anxiety, I would say. Still was hard in my head to be okay, Brian's my stepdad. Did not like that, but I definitely think it helped.
Right.
Be more involved. you're there for us and like
Mhm.
not gone for school all the
Mhm.
time. So
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. I like how you said that, Austin, that, once my engagement became more stable, then it pulled things together a little bit more. So then it was more of a shared responsibility between
Right.
the two of us. Yeah. Okay.